Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I just want to welcome everybody and thank you for being here in celebration of Black History Month. We are in for a treat today. I am very happy that we have a special guest here to present this lecture. My name is Jill Upson. I am the Executive Director of the Herbert Henderson Office of Minority Affairs. And we are excited to have with us today Frank Walker. Frank Walker II is a criminal defense and personal injury attorney with offices in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Morgantown. Attorney Walker graduated from South Charleston High School and earned his Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice from West Virginia State College, a Master of Arts in Education Leadership Studies from Marshall University, and a Juris Doctorate of Law from West Virginia University College of Law. Although Attorney Walker is one of the most sought-after criminal defense attorneys in Western Pennsylvania and Northern West Virginia, he remains involved in the community by volunteering his time to speak on criminal justice issues. Additionally, Attorney Walker understands the importance of giving back to the communities in which he serves by supporting the efforts of local nonprofit organizations through his Safe Ride program and backpack giveaway. Attorney Walker is originally from Institute, West Virginia, lives in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania with his brilliant and beautiful wife, Jennifer Walker, formerly Jennifer Jackson. Attorney Walker asks that you keep he and his wife in prayer during this difficult time as his two daughters, Hannah and Gracelyn, both enter their teenage years. Ladies and gentlemen, I present Frank C. Walker, attorney.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Does everyone hear me okay? All right. All right, so we're gonna have some fun today. This is gonna be really interactive. And if you're not interactive by choice, it will be by demand. So I will definitely be calling on people from time to time. Again, my name is Frank Walker. I'm originally from Institute, West Virginia, graduated from West Virginia State College, Marshall University, and West Virginia University. And what I do for a living is criminal defense. And typically people ask, well, how do you do that for a living? What is it like to be a criminal defense attorney? Essentially, it's babysitting a lot, and it is also repeating yourself a lot. The main question I get asked often is, what do you do? What advice do you give when someone's stopped by the police? What do you tell them? And my main advice over and over and over again is just to get home. Your job is to get home. It's not to argue with police. It's not to try to tape and reach for your phone. Your job is to get home. So if you got to say, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, 50 times, I don't care. Get home. You can argue about it later, get your attorney, argue about it later. So that's my free plug today. Now, I want to thank the committee for inviting me to speak here today. It's good to be home. Like I said, I'm from this area and grew up here. And it's always good to come back and see familiar faces. So, Black History Month. When Michelle and Nada talked to me about presenting on Black History Month, we always talk about similar figures. We talk about the Martins, the Malcolms, the Booker T's, Shirley's, Oprah, Frederick, all these different people you can choose from to inspire for your speech. But I didn't choose any of these people. I went a different direction. Chose this guy. Anyone know who this is? Who's that guy? They're the same person, Alexander Hamilton. Now, you wouldn't know this unless you have a kid who you were forced to mortgage your home and take out a loan to buy tickets to this play, Hamilton, which is all across the nation. And he talks about what he did in the play. Now, the reason I chose him is because in the play he talks about his shot, not throwing away his shot. And he has a song, I'm not throwing away my shot, over and over and over again. When he talks about he's fresh off the war, they're trying to make change in the country at that time. There's so many things going wrong in America at that time. System's messed up, Constitution needs amended, what are they going to do? And he talks about it over and over and over again, I'm not going to throw away my shot. So, he made a decision to make some changes, small changes, but he had to identify the issues first. So, my question to you today is, why are you throwing away your shot? Because for 28 days every year, we do the same thing. We talk about Black history, we talk about the leaders, we talk about the change people have made over and over and over again. We change our profile pictures, then on March 1st, we forget all about it. So my question is, why are we throwing away our shot to have actual change year-round, putting some plans into action? And that's what I want to talk about today, change in the criminal justice reform. And again, his shot is about his opportunity to make change. Things are wrong in our country. He knew something had to be done, and he made a decision to do something. What does this mean? How does throw away your shot deal with the law, and why are you talking about an old white man during Black History Month? Well, we have a broken criminal justice system. Something must be done to fix it. We must make a decision to do something about it. First, we throw away our shot at the system by not knowing the issues. We can't begin to fix our system because we don't know the issues we face. Therefore, we don't know what to do. We don't understand the small things we can do to affect major change. So, for those of you who say, well, I've never been in trouble, this doesn't apply to me, I don't know anything about the system, I've never been arrested, and I don't know anything about the criminal justice system. Well, I have a message for you. You are going to learn today. The volume up.
Really violating our values as a people. We are the nation that have land of free. This nation that savors liberty and those ideals, really that were lights into the globe. Now incarcerates more nations.
It doesn't seem to be adjusting it. It must be something within the computer itself again.
Done a very effective job over the last 2 decades because crime is down. Crime is down significantly throughout the country, with some exceptions. And I attribute that to smart policing, better policing, more effective policing, proactive policing.
Policing is in some sense a victim of its own success in the following sense. And that is that crime rates have plummeted in the last 30 years. At the same time, public support, public trust, public confidence in policing over the same time period has been flat. The public actually cares a great deal more about how they are treated by public authorities within authorities than they care about the effectiveness of the police.
My first experience getting hit with tear gas and rubber bullets was on August 12th, which really radicalized me in a way to want to pursue reform efforts, not only just in Ferguson, but all throughout St. Louis and the entire country. Because the experience of getting tear gas and rubber bullets was so unbelievable. I couldn't imagine something like that could happen in modern day America.
If your intention is to, jail massive numbers of people, if you believe that, prison is an effective means of dealing with the myriad social needs of the African American community, then it's pretty effective. And I know no one will come out and say something like that. That sounds insane. But in fact, there's a long history in this country of dealing with problems in the African American community through the criminal justice system, criminalizing social problems in a way that we don't do in other communities.
There are about 140,000 people in the United States who said they want without parole sentences. The number of people said they want without parole sentences in Western Europe is 12. These very long sentences that are being served is a very unusual feature of the American criminal justice. They serve very little public safety.
The study shows that we have probably 20% less poverty in the United States. We weren't over-incarcerated the way that we are because it has such an impact on people's future earnings when they get out of prison. It has an impact on their children, their overall quality of life for their families. But in addition to all that, it is disproportionate punishment minorities in this country as well. There's no difference between blacks and whites who are using drugs or even dealing drugs. But the African Americans are about almost 4 times more likely to be arrested for that.
Well, I think I
Again, I apologize for the sound. We worked on it time and time again, so bear with us throughout this. So what they talked about essentially is mass incarceration. That's one of the main issues that is blocking our view of justice, clear justice in the system. We jail the most people in the world. We jail the most people, we have the most people on death row in the world. But yet we still don't do anything about it. We still are privatizing our prisons, we're privatizing our jails. People are profiting from it. So the question is, how do we change our mass incarceration? We have different prosecutors in different parts of the state, different parts of the country. We have Wesley Bell out in St. Louis, that running on a platform of being smart on crime. That Larry Krasner in Philadelphia talks about being smart on crime and not making our jails overcrowded for minor offenses. I mean, we should be laser focused on who we send to our prisons and jail. I don't want dangerous criminals on my street more than next to the next person. However, if we don't have room for them in the prisons because we're incarcerating low-level offenders and drug offenders, what are our options here? Because if you look at what we have now, we're in the middle of a opioid epidemic. And it's similar to what we've done in the 1990s and 80s with the crack cocaine epidemic. We're trying to incarcerate ourselves out of that epidemic, and it's just not working. So we talk about mass incarceration. We're talking about the prosecutors when they have no lack of discretion, and they have to do based on their office policy. And they're doing overcharging, which leads to people being forced to plead guilty. Mandatory sentencing, lack of true diversionary programs, and the death penalty. We have to work out a way to be smarter on justice in our system, because the role of the prosecutor in the criminal justice system is to pursue justice. What happens is you have prosecutors who are mainly based on statistics. They're looking at their statistics. They want to prosecute everything. What's my conviction rate? Well, it's 97.8. They're not worried about being fair. They're charging wobbler crimes as felony. What's a wobbler crime? A crime that can be charged either as a misdemeanor or a felony. We all know you get the felony, it's the scarlet letter. Filing excessive numbers of counts, overcharging. Adding enhanced charges that carry mandatory jail time, like gun possession, even when the gun wasn't a factor in the actual crime. Adding additional counts without the evidence, and threatening to ask for more time, which leads to forced pleas. This is what's happening in our criminal justice system because people just aren't aware of it. What other issues do we have blocking justice in our system? We have a cash bail system. So what's the big deal about cash bail?
Our cash bail system. The idea is that if you have money, you can buy your freedom, and if you don't, you can't. You sit in jail. 2/3 of people who go to jail in this country live below the poverty line. Incarceration only perpetuates that inequity. The easiest way to think about the cash bail system is that it's criminalizing poverty. So here's how bail works. When somebody gets arrested, they're accused of a crime. That's all it is. It's an accusation. And then they go in front of a judge, and a judge, oftentimes in this country, sets a bail. past 3 decades, the majority of the increase in incarceration is because of bail and pretrial detention, meaning bail is set, people can't afford it, and there are more and more people in our jails every single day, more and more people contributing to that 2.2 million mass incarceration in this country because of bail. Sitting in jail destabilizes a person to the point that even when they get out, they're more likely to be rearrested, more likely to have continued contact with the criminal justice system because that period of being in jail, because they couldn't afford bail, leads to what's known in the business as a criminogenic effect, meaning once you are in the system, you're more likely to be in the system again and again. And that is ultimately because the person was too poor to make bail the first time around. Everything that sets them up to be safe, to be law-abiding, to be healthy, to be well, falls apart. And that is what the criminalization of poverty is.
So now you see what we're blocking the clear view of justice with all these issues. And you go on top of that, you got the school-to-prison pipeline. Who knows what the school-to-prison pipeline is?
Well, essentially, and Professor, why don't you address that, being coming from academia? But, you know,
I was going to call on it.
we're dealing with remnants of that now as we look at the disproportionate suspension and expulsion of particularly African American students from our secondary school system. I mean, we're seeing second and third graders suspended from school. And what do you do when you're put out of school? And we see that in our junior high and high schools as well. And so what is the kid supposed to do when they get out of school?
Right, right. Now, I don't want to talk about my past because my mother's there, number one. And number two, you know, I don't want anything to get on the news. But there are times when I had missteps in the classroom. But instead of being straight to jail, it was, okay, you need to do this first. You need to do this first. Right now, we have teachers, and I understand it is very tough to be a teacher. But now it's okay, one step, boom, you're out of here. And instead, and we'll see in the next video, the next clip, instead of having counselors and resource workers in the jail, we have armed guards in our jail, and not in our jails, in our schools.
The school-to-prison pipeline is a term that describes how American kids get pushed out of public schools and into the juvenile and criminal justice systems. Basically, harsh zero-tolerance policies in schools have led to more suspensions, expulsions, and even in-school arrests. Getting suspended or expelled means more time away from school, and it doesn't take an honor student to figure out that's bad news. In fact, expelled and suspended students are more likely to get held back a grade, end up in juvie, or just drop out altogether. And dropping out of high school makes you 3 times more likely to get arrested. Back in school, forget about hallway monitors. Students these days often have to deal with school police. Minor offenses that might have landed you in the principal's office back in the day can now actually lead to your arrest. Students of color and those with disabilities are disproportionately affected. Black students get expelled 3 times more than their white classmates, while a student with a disability is 2 times more likely to get an out-of-school suspension than everyone else. And it's not because these kids are just bad apples. The Justice Department found that black students got harsher punishments than their white peers for doing the same things. So maybe it's time our education system got schooled?
So now, we got the school-to-prison pipeline. And on top of that, we talk about the drug epidemic that we have going on with the opioid epidemic. And the disproportion between the early 90s, early 80s, 90s, and what we have right now. Is anyone here? No? Okay. Essentially what he talks about is the change and the difference between what we had in the 80s and 90s versus what we have right now, and how they treated it as a lock them up first versus the treatment aspect we have right now. By show of hands, how many of you have seen the commercials at night or in the afternoon that talk about if you are tired of heroin, Percocet, come to the treatment center? How many of you have seen that? Okay. How many have seen the billboards of the same thing? Show of hands. Now, I want you to imagine that same billboard and that same commercial, but instead of saying Percocet and heroin, I want you to put in there crack cocaine. Can you imagine that billboard or commercial be ran in today's world? Probably not, because at that time, no one really cared. Now, it's hitting the suburbs, it's hitting the schools. And instead of going into the schools and talking about the dangers of taking the pills in the first place that will escalate to heroin usage, escalate to addiction, we're not doing that. And that's what we need to do. We need to treat it like a public health problem instead of a telephone crime issue. And finally, we have over-policing of communities and the gateway drug. Who knows what the gateway drug is?
Marijuana.
Yeah. Why do you say marijuana?
Because that's what everybody said.
That's because everyone else says it. It is a gateway drug. I will agree that it's a gateway drug. But it's not a gateway drug in the sense of what society wants you to believe it is. It's a gateway drug for them to get into your car, for them to get into your house, and search your person. Because all they have to do is say, I smell marijuana. I have probable cause to search your house. I smell marijuana. I have probable cause to search your car. You need to let me search your car now. That's what it's a gateway to. It's a red herring for them to get in where they wouldn't ordinarily have the authority to be. And that's why it's a gateway drug. So we have to get back to community policing. We need more police in our communities, not for over-policing of just saying, hey, we need you to follow us and be scared of us. No, we need police in the community to get back to community policing. So the children understand who the police officers are. And the police officers understand who the children, who the parents are, what the nuances are, what school they go to, what they like or dislike, who's in the gang, who's not in the gang. So now when something happens in that community, the officer comes in with an understanding, I know who these kids are. I know who their parents are. I know where they go to school. I can make a better impact because they're not going to be scared of talking to me. They're going to want to talk to me because they want safer streets.
I have been a police officer for a very, very long time. You see these notes in my hand because I'm also a black preacher. If you know anything about black preachers, we'll close and then we'll keep going for another 20 minutes. Amen? So I need this to keep pushing this thing forward. So I've been a police officer for a very, very long time. And I mean, I predated technology. I'm talking about before pictures. Laugh if you want to, but I'm telling the truth. I predate war on our fellow man. I mean, war on drugs. I predate all that. I predate so much, and I've been through ebbs and flows, and I've been through good and bad times, and still I absolutely love being a police officer. I love being a police officer because it's always been a calling for me and never a job. And even with that, my personal truth is that law enforcement is in a crisis. It's an invisible crisis, and it has been for many, many years. Even though we in law enforcement say, you know what, we can't arrest our way out of this. We say in law enforcement things like, yeah, it's illegal to profile, and you know, in law enforcement, we even agree that we have to adopt this thing and become more oriented to community policing. And yet, all the while, still, we continue the same thing that contradicts everything that we just admitted.
So, question is, what do we do next? What do we do after Black History Month is over with? What do we do now we're being confronted with the issues? Because a lot of times, when I speak in schools and speak in communities, they don't think there's a problem with the criminal justice system. Why? Because they haven't been influenced, they haven't been touched by it. And their family members have touched that system. And then when they touch it, oh, this system is so jacked up. Well, it's been that way. But now that you have the information, what do you do next? How do you use this knowledge of the issues within our criminal justice system, within our communities? Here's the 3 questions I posed earlier. First of all, you have to spread the word. Now, us sitting here today, we went through a presentation, and we heard about the issues, some of the major issues in criminal justice system. Spread the word to your friends and family, your knowledge in the communities, in your churches, in your practice. your small business take your shot at making major change in our system. Because if we remain ignorant about the system and the issues, or we turn a blind eye to it, or we just completely ignore it, it's going to remain the same. It's going to keep negatively impacting our communities. We need to vote in lawmakers with knowledge of how their views on criminal justice reform impacts our communities. When we go to the voting votes, we can't just vote for people based on name recognition or anything. We need to vote based on the issues in our system, because eventually it's going to impact you, directly or indirectly. Thank you for your time, and I will take any questions at this time.
Suppose all drugs were legalized and we had very, very strict controls, what would that do to the system? I mean, you would know who's using what, you would have money to really do treatment and to, you know, talk about the downside of whatever drugs it is you're using, but, you know, you wouldn't be arresting people for doing it.
Well, I think inherently in your question is, you know, what can we do if the drugs were legalized? And correct me if I'm wrong, if the drugs were legalized, how would they impact our criminal justice system? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Asking? I think it depends on which drugs. I don't think that will ever happen, number one. I think we're on the step to legalizing marijuana on a federal level. And I think the main thing will be the value it happens, it impacts each state. Because you look at Colorado, they have millions of dollars in surplus because they have legalized marijuana. So they're using it for their schools, their streets, their businesses, their departments, their criminal justice system. And they're educating people along with that. They're not just saying, okay, legalize it, come here, buy it, it's legal, it's free. No. Along with that comes a component of education. I think that's the main thing we're lacking in our criminal justice system. People don't understand the nuances and the penalties that come along with it.
To a point, what he just stated, if we look back on the alcohol, the prohibition period, and then look at the drug period today, and what we did legally in relation to alcohol state by state and even nationally, what you just stated, I'm trying to think or envisioning what would happen, which I think is what he was getting at, if we were to legalize all forms of drugs. But we did something back then, state by state, to kind of curb, I guess you may say, what Colorado's done. But how would that affect us today, given the fact that so many people are already hooked on drugs, and those who are not?
Well, I think if you draw the parallel to alcohol and prohibition, I think with that, and I know it's taken some time, but if you notice on the commercials for Anheuser-Busch, for Budweiser, you know, it may be at the very end, and it may be very, very fast and the smallest font possible, but there is like a disclaimer, please don't drink and drive, don't do it, and say that real fast. But I think that's a part of the component we would need to be more deliberate if they were to get to that point where they're legalizing more narcotics, and not just Schedule 1s and Schedule 2s, but legalizing all of them. And again, I by no means are under any impression that we'll get that far, but I think to the extent that we are legalizing marijuana on that track, I think there needs to be an educational component with it, so people know the dangers of overuse or misuse or selling and giving it to minors. There needs to be age restrictions also. I think that needs to be a component of it also. I think it definitely needs to be education.
It's quite like cigarettes as well.
Exactly.
You'd say, talk about...
Again, one more time, then get back to you.
Well, I was just thinking at the very top of the presentation, when it was talking about bail and people not having money. And rather than, in my mind, the discussion of legalization of drugs and various, you know, what is the root cause for people to occasion to have contact with the criminal justice system? I submit to you that it's poverty. And what I'm wondering is, are there statistics? I mean, say back during the time when there was quote unquote full employment, where anybody that wanted a job had a job, and it was more a living wage than it was, you know, just paycheck to paycheck.
Right.
But my theory is that is the correlation. who don't have employment, who don't have a reason to get up in the morning and go to work and provide for their family, and are looking for a way to anesthetize themselves against all of the ills of the community and their self-concept, is in my view, a big contributor to the problem.
I agree.
Poverty, and I submit to you the poverty is the root cause for the health crisis that we see in our communities today as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think oftentimes in sentencing, when I have a defendant standing beside me, you know, it's difficult because a lot of times you're trying to think of the best things to say and put your defendant and your client in the best light in front of the judge. But the main thing a judge wants to hear is something that will give them, he or she, some assurance that your client won't be back in front of them. And one thing that will help in most of the cases is employment. Because if they have employment, and like you said, they have a reason to get up, they have a reason to go to work, they have things that they need to provide for themselves and for their family, and they have a reason to remain clean because they can't keep that job to provide for their family, then that gives them some assurance that the person will remain on the straight and narrow. So I totally agree.
But nobody's talking about it.
No one's talking about it. No one's talking about it.
Not serious discussion. And I'll give you one more little anecdote to sort of illustrate my point. Here in West Virginia, and many in this room, I'm sure, will remember, it was referred to then as the Governor's Summer Youth Program, where countless thousands and thousands of kids come from that arena in terms of employment, were put to work during the summer months when they were out of school. We spent several $1 million paying the wages for kids who got to work up to 20, 25 hours a week during the summer months. You don't see anything like that.
No.
And nobody's saying anything.
No.
You know, we ought to be marching on the Capitol. They talk about a $10 million surplus that the legislature had this year.
Right.
Would you think that a little piece of that could be, they're going to send it to help build the law? Why not a summer youth program?
I think it's a great idea. It's a great idea. No, stay on the bandwagon. They go right across the street.
When you talk about marijuana as a gateway drug and what has happened in Colorado, what has happened with the rest of the drug scene in Colorado as marijuana has become legal, and are there any statistics that say, you know, some of these other drugs, heroin, opiates, and that has decreased, and how have arrests and incarceration been affected?
I don't have the numbers as far as opioid being decreased, but I do know that it has been decreased because a lot of people who get hooked on the Percocet and the Oxys, it's because of pain. So because they can't get anything legal, or something that can get legal is not even strong enough. So they're turning to those pills. Now that they've legalized it there, a lot of people are using marijuana as a pain reducer or reducing the inflammation. So they're using that instead of the opioids out there. So the numbers are there. I don't have them with me, but as far as the arrest, I don't know. I would imagine they've gone about, just pure logic, you would think they've gone down. But what I do know is that people are coming in from out of state to come there and purchase it. And now the DEA, they're waiting at the border, waiting for those people to leave where it's legal to go back, and they're waiting to arrest them right there at the border. So I think we need to do something on a national level so people are not just flooding to certain states where it's legal and then getting arrested, getting set up as soon as they leave because it's legal there, but it's not legal once they cross the state line.
If those who commit white-collar crimes were receive the same sort of sentences that those who commit crimes with drugs receive, would that make a difference in the criminal justice system?
I don't think similar sentences would make a huge difference. I think the main thing is focusing on the element of society that is dangerous to us.
So you don't think that a judge, for example, taking millions of taxpayer dollars and getting a few years versus somebody selling crack for a few cents and getting 10 years will make a difference?
In that sense, yes, but you have to look at from a fraud, let's take a fraud client and they embezzled money or they defrauded millions of people of all this money. And now you have hundreds of people who are victims and they want their money back. If they're in prison, they're not getting any money back.
But might it not stop sentencing?
It could. It could. But I think the bigger part would be to focus on the dangerous who pose a safe and healthy risk in our communities. That would be the biggest, in my perspective. Now, as far as the financial crimes, I've always made the argument when I'm representing clients, okay, they stole $10,000. They work at a job that pays them $35,000 a year. You want to put them in prison for 5 years. They owe this money back to this victim who's going to be waiting for years to get the money back. Well, you put them away for 3 to 5 years, how are they going to pay that money back? They're not going to be able to pay it back until years later. Now you have a victim who's being victimized twice, once by the actual defendant and once by the court system, because now the person can't pay the money back. So a lot of it is just a balancing of the equities. What's more equitable in that situation? Now in your situation, when you have someone who's millions of dollars, what's the likelihood of them being able to pay that money back? Probably slim to none. So the reality, the alternative is, what do you do to them? Do you just simply punish them, throw them in jail? Or do you try to make them to pay some of that money back? I don't know the answer to that. But I would think anytime you're dealing with something where you have a situation where you don't want to re-victimize the victim, the alternative would be, in my perspective, let them pay that money back first, instead of just locking them up.
I guess my thoughts have always been, in comparing the two, that there's those in power that make those laws that put people who have crack, for example, in jail for 10 years, and make the same laws that put themselves in jail if they do a white-collar crime for 2 years, or 1 year.
And
if they were more equal, I think they would be more sympathetic to making those laws for those who violate the laws of crack than they are currently. That's why.
Well, I think that's why you see the reform change that you're seeing right now on a national level, is because the cronies are getting locked up for these financial crimes and for these white-collar crimes. They're getting locked up and they're seeing how vicious the criminal justice system is once you get branded with the scarlet letter of the felony. And now you're locked up and you're trying to get out and rebrand yourself as someone brand new and rehabilitated. No, you still have that felony. Now what can you do? Now all of a sudden somebody wants reform high up in the office. It's because someone who ordinarily wouldn't have been impacted by the system, now they're impacted by the system and they see how unfair it is and how crushing and unforgiving it can be. So I think that's the main change we're seeing in our system right now.
Just don't see it that way.
No.
So what do you see? What are your optics on the new federal legislation? Is it, what is it, the second chance?
The first step?
Yeah, first step.
Yeah, I haven't digested it fully, but I know the parts I did digest, it has helped my clients tremendously. Because now, for example, let's say a career offender, you need to have 2 prior dangerous felonies or drug felonies prior to the first step. Now, my understanding is those felonies have to be within a certain time frame. And if they're not, they can be considered stale. So now, instead of having 2, now you only have 1. And that takes your guidelines from a 30 to life to maybe like a 60-month sentence. So that's tremendous on one point. But on the other part, you have someone who's been sitting in jail for 5 to 6 years, detached from society, not earning any income, not contributing to society, and they're going right back out there. You're not giving them any training. You're not giving them any education whatsoever. So now you expect them to go back out there and be productive and don't break any laws. And then we act surprised when they come back to the system a couple months later because they got back to the same thing they were doing in the first place to place them in that system. So I think, again, it comes back to education. It really does. But the first step law, it does help a lot of people, and it will help a lot more people. But I think there needs to be follow-up to it.
And it has to do more with nonviolent offenses?
It's nonviolent and violent offenses. Yes.
Have you had the opportunity to talk to school districts about things that should be done for students rather than out-of-school suspension? Do you discuss that with them?
I do. Oftentimes, because in the city where I practice, mainly in Pittsburgh and Morgantown, you're dealing with a lot of college students, you're dealing with a lot of high school students. And when I go in and talk, it's usually around, I said like a month from now. About a month from now, my phone will be blowing up because underage drinking. First warm weekend, someone throws a party, parents go away, underage drinking. Or someone brings, clear liquor in a water bottle to the school, and someone finds out about it and a bunch of people get suspended. Well, what about giving them an online class? Or what about taking them for a weekend on a Saturday and a Sunday and forcing them to sit through this class and do community service on the weekends? And that way they understand that their freedom can be taken away in that manner. They continue to do that. Some schools are listening, some aren't. Sometimes the kids come right back into the office. And the saddest thing in my practice is to see the gradual sequence of events when they step up. They start with the underage drinking, then they do a public intoxication, then they do an underage DUI, then it's a DUI, then it's a DUI involving accident. And it just keeps progressing because no one's actually putting the axe to the root of the problem, which is the education and letting them know what happens if you keep on this road. They're not telling them.
How about civil rights violations with respect to the disproportionate expulsion and suspension of African American versus Caucasian? I mean, do you find actual violations of rights?
That's not my area of law, but what I've seen in civil rights violations, it is very, very difficult to be successful in that realm because of qualified immunity and absolute immunity. A lot of these students, a lot of the teachers and professors and administrators, they have some sort of qualified immunity in certain instances. But again, that's not my area of law. I would imagine that you probably could, but I don't want to speak on that.
First of all, I'm glad that you mentioned the bail system because prior to, I was aware of it, I'm certain we all are, but the underlying causes of how it started, whereas the wealthy can do the same crime. Because I have a friend who's lived in this area, and his son was riding in the car with some students from a more affluent area. He went to prison, and they just got off. And spent a couple of years in prison. And even though the ones who got off said he wasn't involved, the judge still sent him to prison. Now that was probably more civil rights than anything, but the bail system as such, you hear about someone with no bail, someone with $500 and so forth. And then the fact of sitting in the jail, like one of the videos stated, sitting in the jail and feeling, it's hopeless, versus being able to go home and feeling help and it's on the way.
Right. I mean, the bail system is unforgiving because it's cyclical. I mean, you get arrested and you're thinking, okay, well, I can post bond. Well, maybe you can, maybe you can't. Let's say you can't post bond and you sit there for the weekend. Now you're sitting there Monday, you're sitting there Tuesday. Someone's got to call your job and tell them he's either on vacation, he's sick, or she can't be here today. Or if you can't, you're going to lose that job. So if you lose that job, most of the people are one paycheck away from poverty. You can't afford your housing anymore. Now you lose your house. Now, what do you do at that point? All because you couldn't afford a $500 bill, or because the judge put a higher bill on you. Or even worse, you're waiting for a year for your trial, and you're found not guilty. But for that 1 year, you're sitting in jail because you couldn't post a $100,000 bond. Now you turn, okay, well, I'm going to get some retribution. I'm going to get them back. I'm going to sue them under 1983. They got qualified and absolute immunity. So it is an unforgiving system, and I'm glad everyone here is hearing what I'm saying today because it will resonate with you if and when you come to that position, either yourself or your family member are in that position. You can educate, okay, first of all, you need to hire an attorney. Hire someone who understands what they're doing and what they're talking about. If not, you're going to get messed up. You're going to come back again and you're going to spend life on a payment plan trying to pay off court costs because you couldn't pay a $500 bill in the beginning.
So in another, going in a little bit different direction, suppose people or kids, younger people were trained to be self-employed. I mean, people go to jail because they steal, people steal because they either want the merchandise or they use the merchandise to acquire other means. But if people were being trained at a very early age that they could be self-employed and they could, start making money, cutting grass, doing this, and graduate. I mean, you're an independent businessman as well as a lawyer, right? And you have to be as much a businessman as you have to be a lawyer. in order to be successful, right?
Absolutely.
So if our school system taught people that, you know, you ain't got to work for somebody else. You're not going to school to learn to get a job. You're going to school to learn to do X, Y, Z, and develop your own systems.
I totally agree. I think we need to encourage self-employment, but to be clear, I didn't start out self-employed. You know, I worked for the county, I worked for a firm, and I worked for another firm before I went out on my own. But I think you need to take those steps and understand that it's a process. But if the goal is always entrepreneurship, if the goal is always owning your own business and a small business, then you keep that goal and understand you can go back and help someone else out, get to that point, hire someone else who's interested in being a small business owner, being an entrepreneur, and helping them out, and mentoring in our communities. I think that's very important.
Well, I mean, if it's introduced at an early age.
Absolutely,
okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, in my school, when I was coming up through high school, they had a pre-law program that would inform you about how to deal with law, or how to deal with the justice system if it comes up. I think that's a important way to teach people how to deal with it when they think it comes up.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's when I go to schools and talk, I always talk about, first thing I talk about is what to do when stopped by police. Because I want that out there. I want that resonate. Because if one person comes to me later on and says, hey, you know, I got arrested by the police and they stopped me, they just gave me a ticket. And I remember what you said. I remember you told me just shut up, say yes sir, no ma'am, whatever I need to do to get home. Whereas my friend who got arrested the other day around the corner, he was running off at the mouth, tried to pull his phone out, and all of a sudden he got roughed up and put in jail. And now he has a high bond. You see how everything they just pile it on you. Then you get overcharged by the prosecutor. And then you're sitting for some time, waiting to get bailed out, or waiting for your trial. And then you lose your home, lose your job. All because you couldn't follow simple instructions just to be quiet and get home. Yeah, that's very important, yes.
You mentioned the importance of being a good lawyer.
Yes.
Should attorneys be required to advertise their specialty? For example, your mother's in the medical field, doctors have to advertise their specialty. We're in the education field, we advertise our specialty. Attorneys don't tend to do that, so how do you pick out the best attorneys for the...
I think you definitely have to do your research. It's easier.
How do you do that if attorneys don't advertise what they're specialized in?
Well, it's easier and harder at the same time now with the internet. I mean, you get more information out there, but then you have to rely on that information the attorney puts out there. Sometimes they put, I do this. For example, he asked me a question about, what was it about, civil rights, suing, and immediately I said, I don't do that type of law. There needs to be attorneys to say, more people say, I don't do that type of stuff. But what happens is, what I'm seeing is you see clients hire different attorneys, and they're trying to be businessmen other than lawyers, and say, okay, I need the money, I don't care what it is, I'll do it. And they have no idea what they're doing, and they're walking through this courtroom trying to defend this possession with intent to distribute narcotics, and next thing you know, they just jack it all up. But they got the money, but they're okay. So to get back to answering your question, I think you need to interview, sit down with the consultation with the attorney, ask the tough questions. Hey, how many cases have you had before? You can't tell me the results, but are you comfortable handling these cases? Do you know this judge? Do you know this prosecutor? Are you licensed to practice in this state? That probably should be number one. You know, have you done these cases before? What do you see the issues in my case? And you can tell within a couple minutes if they know what they're talking about.
But I'm just thinking, you know, if I were charged with a crime and they said you had a right to call an attorney, I'd get the telephone directory. How do I figure out who to call?
A lot of times you know people who are attorneys, and you'll call them, and they'll say, well, I don't do that type. Let me give you contact with so-and-so. Let me give you contact with so-and-so. A lot of people, they advertise on their website their specialty or what they do, but we're not required to do that.
I know. I'm just saying, shouldn't we be?
It's a difficult question because ethically, I mean, now you're honing yourself into just doing that type of law. So, example, if I tell you I do criminal defense and personal injury, and you know me, but you have a family law issue, you may think, well, he doesn't do that, I'm not going to call him. But I would want you to call me because I can put you in contact with someone who does do family law. I have that connection for a referral. So when you're advertising you only do this, it's a catch-22. Because yeah, people will call you just for that, but they won't call you because they only think you do only that. So it's difficult.
Been that long since lawyers could actually advertise, though, hasn't it?
No, I mean, they can advertise, but the dangerous part now is that it's online.
Did they change the law 5 or 6 years ago where lawyers could advertise, where prior to that it was almost illegal for lawyers to advertise?
I don't know about that. I don't know about that. It could be. I don't know. I haven't heard about it. I haven't changed my advertising, so.
You ain't been out there that long.
Maybe I've been out there long. Any other questions? All right. Thank you for your time. We have refreshments outside, I believe, and I'll be outside after.
So before we dismiss to the reception out in the Great Hall, I just want to take care of a few housekeeping items. I would like to thank the AARP. I don't see Linda Budd in here, but the AARP is responsible for the reception that we're going to have out there, and I just want to say thank you to them. I want to say thank you to the Department of Arts, Culture, and History for partnering with me on this series of lectures that we're having. The next one will be next Saturday at 5 p.m. You will need to bring identification because we will have adult beverages, so if you want to partake, you'll have to have proof that you are over 21. And then I'd like to encourage you to continue this discussion. That was a really fascinating topic and a wonderful presentation that we had by Attorney Walker. And so as you go out and mingle with your friends and your family, especially people who may not have ever even considered the inequity that exists within our criminal justice system, to really have a conversation with them and share with them, so maybe they will begin to rethink these things, and we'll get some of the policy changes that we need, especially on the federal level. Lastly, I would encourage you to follow us at minorityAffairs.wv.gov. Our Twitter is at WVHHOMA, and our Facebook is at WVHHOMA. So thanks again for being here, and please feel free to partake of the refreshments that are out in the Great Hall. Thank you.